everybody listening to this will occupy a default emotional domain of appreciation and gratitude.
Mm.
Because when you are there, you're not anxious, you're not nervous, you're not fearful. The two cannot coexist. It's a simple strategy, but extraordinarily powerful if you actually apply it. That's an example of a
Yep.
teaching, and I don't have to tell you that this comes from the great masters. In my book, Are You Ready to Succeed? I mentioned whatever you appreciate and give thanks to will increase in your life. It absolutely happens.
Right. Today, we have the immense pleasure of welcoming Dr. Srikumar Rao to the show. Dr. Rao is a distinguished coach, speaker, and author who works with top entrepreneurs, professionals, and senior executives, guiding them on their spiritual and professional journeys. His pioneering course, Creativity and Personal Mastery, has been a highlight at prestigious institutions like the Columbia Business School. Dr. Rao's work has reached millions through his TED Talk, Plug Into Your Hardwired Happiness, and his acclaimed books, including Are You Ready to Succeed and Happiness at Work. His latest book, Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots, continues to inspire many seeking unstoppable success. With a PhD from Columbia Business School and extensive media coverage, Dr. Rao is renowned for transforming ancient wisdom into practical exercises for today's intelligent professionals. We are thrilled to have him share his insights with us today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Tim. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
We met at Genius Network. Dr. Joe Polish introduced us and said that we needed to have this conversation. So I'm grateful that you're with me here today, and I'm excited to learn more.
Thank you. And me too. I always learn from these too.
Absolutely. Dr. Rao, can you share a bit about your background and what inspired you to create the Creativity and Personal Mastery course?
Certainly. So, what happened is that I came to Columbia University, Columbia Business School, to do my PhD. And after I did my PhD, I got a job with a very large multinational. This is Warner Communications. And my career took off like a rocket. I had a lucky break early on, which is Warner Brothers, which is the motion picture subsidiary of Warner Communications, at least it was in those days, came up with a blockbuster film. And the advertising agency came up with 7 different print executions. And we had to decide which one of these to run. Now, that would have been too big a project to have been come to me normally because I'd only been there a few months. But my boss had a personal emergency. His boss had a long scheduled trip to Europe that he didn't want to, forego. So I got to do the project. So I surveyed thousands of motion picture goers in 4 major motion picture markets, on the basis of which I made a recommendation. And the movie went on to become an all-time blockbuster. In fact, even now, more than 50 years later, it's still on the list of 50 top grossing movies at all time. So it did wonders for my career. In case you or your reader or your listeners are interested, that movie was the original Exorcist.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And if you remember the advertising for The Exorcist, it shows a man with a cape and a hat standing in front of a door, half open door, casting a long shadow. That's my contribution to Americana.
Wow. Okay. And then how did that lead to the Creativity and Personal
Well,
Mastery
what
course?
happened is that did wonders for my career. I was not bashful about taking credit for that. So at the
Uh-huh.
ripe age of 22, I was head of corporate research for Warner Communications, reporting directly to the president. So those were heady days.
Hmm.
But I got burnt out by corporate politics, and I said, I have a PhD, so let me go to universities where there is no politics. I was sadly mistaken. I was naive in those days. By the time I realized how alive and well politics was in in the university environment, I'd already made the transition. And then I stagnated. My friends and colleagues who remained in the corporate world moved up hierarchically, became financially successful. And I was stuck as a university professor with cost of living raises. And I just got burnt out. And all my life, I'd been doing a lot of reading, spiritual biography, mystical autobiography. They would take me to a very nice place. And then I'd come back to the real world. And it sucked. And I
Mm.
remember thinking, if all of this is useful only if you're sitting quietly thinking peaceful thoughts, but not when you came to the hurly burly, then it's useless. But somehow I knew that wasn't true. I knew that this was very valuable. I just hadn't figured out how to make use of it. So one day I got my bright idea, which is why don't I take the teachings of the world's great masters, strip them of religious, cultural, and other connotations, and adapt them into exercises acceptable to intelligent people in a post industrial society. The thought of doing that made me come alive. So normally I was a marketing guy. So anytime I got a bright idea, I'd immediately ask, is there a market for it? Would anyone be interested?
Uh-huh.
And if there was, and I thought they'd be interested, I'd develop it. Otherwise, I wouldn't. This is the first time I didn't ask the question. I needed that course for me. So
Ah,
I created it. It did well. I moved it to Columbia Business School in 1999 and it exploded. It was the only course in Columbia which is a university wide draw. It's students from law school, business school, School of International Public Affairs, Teachers College, journalism, all over the place. And Columbia is a big international business school. So students from other schools came there on exchange and they went back and said, this is a great program. You absolutely have to have it here. So it traveled. I taught it at Columbia, I taught it at London Business School, I taught it at Kellogg, I taught it at Berkeley, I taught it at Imperial College, and it was among the highest rated and most popular courses there. In fact, it's the only such course that has its own alumni association. My course has its own alumni association. And it also got a tremendous amount of publicity. It was written up in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, Forbes, Business Week, Financial Times, London Times, Time Magazine, Guardian. I mean, you name it. Every major publication, business publication in North America and the UK covered it at some point or the other. So I taught it at business schools for a number of years. Then I spun it out to teach it privately. And in the meantime, people heard about me. They watched my TED talk and they said, I want to work with you. So I became a coach by default. I didn't set out to be a coach, it just
right,
happened.
right.
So that's my journey.
That's awesome. I'm excited to learn more about how people can find out about it. We'll get to that later on in this in this interview. So you emphasize that life is a spiritual journey.
Mhm.
How can this perspective help individuals in recovery from addiction or mental illness?
Okay. So, what happens in addiction and in mental illness is you use what I call a dysfunctional mental model. And let me explain what a mental model is. A mental model is a notion you have that this is the way the world works.
Mhm.
And you've got dozens of mental models. You've got a model for how do I bring up my children? How do I find a person to marry? How do I get a job? How do I get ahead in the job I have? The problem is not that we have mental models. The problem is that we don't know we have mental models. We think this is the way the world works. But this is not the way the world works. This is our model of the way the world works. And the more we invest in it, the more we believe it, the more it seems to us that this, in fact, is the way the world works. Let me give you an example. Supposing you're in business and you say, I've got to keep an eye on all of my employees and really make sure they're doing what they're doing because they're all crooks. They go out and they waste time and they steal company assets. So I've got to be a policeman. I've really got to keep an eye on them. And if that's the model you have, you'll find very soon that that is exactly what is happening. But if, on the other hand, you say the purpose of this company is to grow, and not only do I want revenues to grow and earnings to grow and serve more customers, but I want my employees to prosper as well. And here are the things I'm going to do make that happen. Then you'll probably find that that is what is happening in your company.
Hmm.
So the important thing to realize, Tim, is that we do not live in a real world. We live in a matrix. This is not
Right.
a matrix created by an alien civilization out to enslave us. It's something that we created because of our mental models.
Hmm.
And having created it, we then experience it the way we created it. Now, let me tell you a story about this. When I was teaching at London Business School, one of my students was the head of psychiatry at Manchester Hospital. And after the course was over, he went back and said, Professor Rao, I just thought I'd want you to know that we had a group of patients on whom we had pretty much given up in the sense, we don't see any signs of progress. The best we can do is manage it and see that they don't get any worse. But on a sudden impulse, I tried some of the exercises that you shared with us in class with them, and doggone it, they started responding. So people who had no interest and who we had given up on actually started responding because we used the exercises you taught us of them. So that was nice to hear.
Hmm. Would you say, I mean, what I'm thinking about is my perception is my reality. It's
Yeah.
like perception is reality. So everybody has a different perception,
Mhm.
and that perception is their reality.
Is their reality. That is absolutely accurate. Yes.
And the other thing I think about is whatever I believe, whether it's good or bad, it's true.
Yeah. I forget who it was. It was a famous businessman who said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're correct.
You're correct. Yeah, I'm trying to remember who was that, like John Wayne or something like that. I no,
I
I
don't know,
know.
it was a famous businessman, but I cannot recollect his name right now.
Yeah, I don't remember who said it either, but it's a great quote, and I believe it 100%. So your approach integrates teachings from the world's greatest masters. Can
Correct.
you share a specific teaching that you find particularly powerful for those on the path to sobriety and mental wellness?
Absolutely. Okay, let me share one which is very powerful and has helped a lot of things. One of the things I invite you to think about, Tim, is your awareness is like a flashlight. What does a flashlight do? A flashlight illuminates whatever you shine it on, correct?
Mhm.
Shine
Yep.
it on the floor, it lights up the floor. Shine it on the ceiling, it illuminates the ceiling, correct?
Yes.
Your flashlight, your awareness is just like a flashlight. And I'll prove it to you right now. I want you to take your flashlight of awareness and shine it on the chair in which you're sitting right now. And the moment you do that, you feel the pressure of your buttocks on the seat. You feel the fabric or the leather against the back of your thighs, correct?
Well, I'm standing, so I'm feeling
Okay.
I'm
So
aware I'm
flashlight
aware that I'm not
on
sitting in
your
a
feet.
chair.
Shine the flashlight of awareness on your feet, and all of a
Okay.
sudden you'll find it pressing against the floor. You can see whether your shoes are tight
Yep.
or not. Right?
Yep.
30 seconds ago, you were not aware of any of this, but now you are.
Correct.
Why is that? Because you shone the flashlight of your awareness on it.
Right. I'm paying attention to
Where
it.
do
That's where my energy is focused.
where do we typically shine the flashlight of our awareness? Typically, we shine it on the two, three, or four things that are wrong in our lives. More
Correct.
precisely, on the two, three, or four things that we have arbitrarily decided is wrong in our lives. And what about the 40, 50, 200 things which are pretty damn good about our lives?
Right.
Do you have food to eat? Do you have a
Mm,
bed to sleep in? Do you have a roof over your head? Can you go from place A to place B with reasonable certainty that you won't be blown up? You recognize that any of this is a big deal. in a big chunk of the world outside, right?
Right.
But you never pay attention to that.
Right.
Lousy strategy. Therefore, it slips by unnoticed. Lousy strategy. What I always have my clients do is immediately flip this around, deliberately, consciously shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many ways in which you're truly blessed and fortunate. When you get up in the morning, don't go immediately to the space, oh my God, there's too much to do. I don't have enough time to do it all.
Yeah.
Call back, remember the many ways in which you're truly fortunate, truly blessed. Soak in it, shower in it, marinate in it, bathe in it. It is my hope that everybody listening to this will occupy a default emotional domain of appreciation and gratitude.
Mm.
Because when you are there, you're not anxious, you're not nervous, you're not fearful. The two cannot coexist. It's a simple strategy, but extraordinarily powerful if you actually apply it. That's an example of a
Yeah.
teaching. And I don't have to tell you that this comes from the great masters. In my book, Are You Ready to Succeed? I mentioned whatever you appreciate and give thanks to will increase in your life. It absolutely happens.
Right. Right. And what I think of when I hear you tell that story is I think about the being in gratitude, and I
Mhm,
think about the gratitude list, which is I do a gratitude list every morning,
mhm,
and I've been in recovery for, I've been in recovery for a while, and that was one of the very first things that I learned from my sponsor was to do a gratitude list. So
mhm.
I'm still doing a gratitude list every single day. It's being in gratitude and appreciating the things that are going well, and it can be everything from I can walk, I have food to eat, I have a comfortable bed to sleep in, I you know I have a job, I make money, I have money in the bank. I mean, like, all of these things are things to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And the point is, I encourage my clients to go out and look for things to be grateful for. And when you do that, there's so many of them. Let me give you two examples. Went to a supermarket a couple of days ago. And my wife was making something and she needed a couple of ingredients. So I picked it up and then I went there. And there was only one checkout counter and there was a long line there. And there was a lady right in front of me who had a shopping cart which was overflowing. I said, "Oh gosh, this is going to take a long time."
Uh-huh.
And then she caught my eye and smiled and said, "Oh, you only have a couple of items. Why don't you go ahead of me?"
Right.
So I went ahead of her. And
Right.
just then another guy came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I'm going to open up counter number two. Why don't you come there?" So I went there. And,
Uh,
I was out in a minute. So things like that happen in our life all the time. And what do we typically do? We feel good about it for a second and forget it.
mhm.
I tell my client, don't just gloss over it. Recognize that this is a sign that the universe is aware of you and working for you. Celebrate it as a miracle that's happened in your life. Because, Tim, as Anthony de Mello says, for a miracle to happen in your life, you don't have to have something which bends the law of physics, like Moses parting the Red Sea or Krishna lifting the mountain.
Right.
For a miracle to happen in your life, all that is necessary is that you have the deep conviction that the universe interceded for you and on your behalf. And when you have that deep conviction, a miracle has happened in your life.
Right.
And if you
What's
look for it, you'll find that there are lots and lots of them.
what's your thought? And one of the things I think about is that I have to be grateful for everything,
Mhm,
whether I perceive it to be good or bad.
mhm.
And um and until I'm grateful, I'm a victim.
Mhm. Yes,
So it's like it's like I'm not in control, God's in control, the universe is in control, whatever you want to call it. Somebody else is in control and it's not me, and everything is happening exactly the way that it's supposed to. What's your thought about things that are perceived to be bad or negative, and gratitude and
that is
appreciation?
a very good question, Tim. One of the things that I do is I coach my clients to in extreme resilience. Resilience, of course, is your ability to bounce back from disaster.
Hmm.
Extreme resilience is when you bounce back so quickly that an external observer might not even know you had suffered an adverse event. So, let me tell you a story, and it's relevant to what we're talking about.
Okay.
This comes from, it's an ancient Sufi tale, and it talks about a man and his son, and they lived in a beautiful valley, and they were very happy, but they were also dirt poor. And the man got sick and tired of being poor, and he decided he was going to become a rich man. And he decided he was going to become a rich man by breeding and selling horses. He bought a stallion. Didn't have enough money to buy a stallion, so he borrowed heavily from the neighbors. And the very day he bought the stallion, it kicked the top bar loose from the paddock where he housed it and ran away. And the neighbors came around and said, "You were going to become a rich man, but your stallion has run away, and you still owe us money.
Hmm.
You are screwed." And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" That stallion fell in with a group of wild horses which were close to where the man lived, and he was able to entice them into his paddock, which he had repaired, so escape was no longer possible. And all of a sudden, he had the stallion back, plus about a dozen wild horses, which, by the standards of that village, made him a wealthy man.
Uh-huh.
Neighbor said, "We thought that you were destitute, but fortune has smiled upon you. How lucky you are." And he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" The man and his son started to break the horses to sell them on the market, and one of the horses threw the man's son and stomped on his leg, and it broke, and it healed crooked. And the neighbors came around and said, "He was such a fine young lad, and now he'll never find a girl to marry him. How sad." And the farmer said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" That summer, the king of the country declared war on a neighboring country, and press gangs moved through the villages, rounding up all the able bodied young men to serve in the army. But this man's son was spared because he had a crooked leg, and the neighbors had tears in their eyes as they rode around. "We don't know if we'll ever see our sons alive again, but you still have your son. How lucky you are." And it's a good thing, bad thing, who knows? And it goes on like that forever. But there's an important lesson in there. Can you imagine something that happened in your life that at the time it happened, you thought this is a bad thing?
Hmm.
Looking back on the same thing now, you can say, "Hey, that wasn't so bad after all." Or maybe even that was a good thing. I can remember several.
Yep.
And if something happened in your life that at the time it happened, you thought was a bad thing, but now you can look back and say it was actually a good thing,
Yeah.
is there a possibility that what you're today about to label bad could in X years turn out to be good? Is there a possibility? Even asking yourself that question will move you to a different emotional domain. And if you then ask yourself the next question, is there something I can proactively do to actually make this a good thing? And you move seamlessly from the realm of despair to the realm of possibility. That's how you become extremely resilient. You never have to recover from adversity because you never label anything that happens to you as adversity. You label it, "this happened." Because here's an important point for you to understand, Tim. Whenever an event occurs, any event, it doesn't cause sorrow or suffering. Sorrow and suffering begin the moment you label that thing, "this is bad." Let's say you get fired.
Hmm.
Okay, I have a lot of spare time. But you go, "Oh my God, I've got mortgage payments to make. I've got my kids' tuition to pay. This is terrible." And the moment you say this is terrible, at that instant suffering begins. Suffering doesn't begin when you get fired, it begins the instant you say this is terrible. What happens if you never say this is terrible? That's easy. Suffering never begins.
Suffering never happens. I love it.
Exactly. So that is a learnable skill, and that's one of the things that I spend a lot of time with my clients on. We're so accustomed to thinking of things as good or bad. We look at something and we immediately decide this is good or this is bad.
Mhm.
And it takes some time for us to come back and look at our lives and see how many things happened that at that time we thought this was terrible. I was speaking before the Global Executive Summit of the Entrepreneurs Organization when somebody in the back raised his hands, waved vigorously, and wanted to be recognized. So I did. And he said, Professor Rao, I've got the perfect example for you. He graduated from one of the top engineering schools in India, one of the IITs, did a master's in Stanford, got a job with a high tech company. His friends got jobs with other high tech companies, and they were looking together to grow their careers and continue their friendship. But he had an immigration problem, as a result of which he had to leave the country. Got an immigration lawyer, fought it, failed. Among other things, he had student debt. And when you have student debt in dollars and you're earning in rupees, you're not in a very good place. But he said, Professor Rao, as a result of that, I met this wonderful lady who's now my wife. I teamed up with a couple of my engineering college buddies. We started a company. It's going gangbusters. All my clients are in America. I come to America at least 6 times a year. I got a picture perfect life. And none of this would have happened if I hadn't been forced out. So you never really know whether what happens to you is, quote, good or, quote, bad. So
Mhm.
why be in a hurry to label it bad?
Right. Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. And it's kind of like feedback. Feedback is not good and it's not bad. Feedback is just feedback.
Exactly.
It's not good, it's not bad. I mean, I would say looking back, hindsight being 2020, everything that I've gone through, everything that has happened in my life is why I am who I am today. So I'm grateful for everything. And sometimes in that moment, it's really hard to think, wow, this is happening for me. Something amazing is on the other side of it. But I really like um your way of getting through it. The question is, what can I do to proactively, what exactly did you proactively
What
get through
can I
this, or
do?
how?
Is question is there any conceivable way in which in X years this could turn out to be a good thing?
Right.
And what can I proactively do to actually make it
Make this
good?
a good thing. Yes. I love that. Because there's things, I mean, I've gone through some things, especially over the last 6 months. I've gone through some things and I'm like, man, I know this is going to be good on the other side, but it doesn't feel very good right now.
I know.
And it's the thought of what potentially is going to happen. It's me, like, I'm fine, I'm healthy, I'm doing great. I'm not smiling though, because I'm it's the thought of what might potentially happen.
Someone once asked Thomas Edison, when he came up with the electric light, he passed through some 10,000 things before he discovered that carbon filaments are the ones that work. And somebody asked him, "Did you feel depressed when all your trials failed?" So he thought for a while and said, "No, I now know 10,000 things that don't work."
Right, right, right. Yeah, love that. How does mindfulness play a role in the journey to recovery? And what practical exercises do you recommend for cultivating mindfulness?
What happens, Tim, is we've got this thing called mental chatter, which is going on in our heads all the time. It's this incessant dialogue that's going on. It's a monologue more than a dialogue. Begins when you get up in the morning, is with you throughout the day, is with you right now when you should be listening to my chatter instead of your chatter.
Uh-huh.
And go, is this true? Does this work? I'm hungry. What should I do? I've got emails to take care of. It's always going on.
Hmm.
Now, understand that mental chatter is harmless. It's there. It's like clouds in the sky. You look up at the sky, there are clouds. You take a walk, and 10 minutes later, you look up, those clouds are gone. There are new clouds. Mental chatter is like that. They're like clouds in the sky. The problem is not that we have mental chatter. The problem is that we identify with our mental chatter. And when you identify with your mental chatter, it can grab you by the throat and take you to all kinds of places you don't want to go. So your best customer calls you up and screams at you. And, you got a situation you have to deal with. But then you say, oh my God, this is terrible. What's going to happen to my business? He's going to leave me. He's going to badmouth me. And that's going to hurt my business, and all my other customers are going to lose. And all of a sudden, you've constructed a story out of whole cloth. and you believe in that, and then you have the emotional reaction to that, it takes you to a very bad place, and it happens almost instantaneously. But if instead you could simply pause back and say, okay, my customer screamed at me, he's angry. All right. And then you say, why is he angry? Is it going to last? Is there something I can do to transform that? And very often you will find that what could be a misfortune actually turns out to be a bonanza. Like, let me give you an example. It's a business example. When Lexus first came to America, this is more than 20 years ago, and it was one of the most expensive new product introductions at that time. Now, Lexus, you got to remember, was totally new. It was a Japanese company trying for the first time to enter the luxury market, which
Mhm.
was dominated by German cars, BMW, Mercedes, and so on. And very soon after they entered, almost immediately, they had to recall all the Lexuses that they sold because of some minor thing that the TSA required. Now that's a disaster, right? You're making a big splash, unknown company coming out with a luxury car, and 2 weeks into the introduction, you have to. With all the American companies thought that's it, that's the end of Lexus, but actually it wasn't because of the way they handled it. Every single Lexus customer was called by an executive of the dealership that sold him, and they said, "Look, thank you very much for buying a Lexus. We're sure that you're going to have many years of happy ownership. We must tell you that it is a minor glitch, as a result of which we have to make some changes. Your car has to come back." And they gave two options. You can leave it on your driveway and we'll pick it up and have it back on your driveway in the morning, or you can make an appointment and come by and we'll fix it for you. And it'll take about 45 minutes. And the dealers did various things. Some topped up the gas tank, some left a box of chocolates and a thank you note, and some had the car cleaned and stuff like that. As a result of which, consumer satisfaction with Lexus was higher after the recall than before.
Mhm.
Good thing, bad thing, who knows? So you always have that option to look at your life, look at what happens, and say, am I going to get steamrolled by this, or am I going to ride the tsunami and look back and say what a wonderful ride it is? Am I going to surf the tsunami and say wonderful, wonderful ride this is? And my advice always is, don't get deluged or drowned by the tsunami, surf it. And that's something you need
Absolutely.
to do if you think about it in
Mhm.
advance.
Right. Being in it's like the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So if you've got life throws you a curveball, like or a tsunami, you just got to go with it
Yeah. The
because
wisdom to
fighting
know
it
the
is
difference is the key, my friend.
right. Right. In your book, Happiness at Work, you discuss personal mastery. How can individuals apply these principles to achieve personal mastery in their recovery journey?
Personal mastery happens almost automatically when you're mindful, Tim.
Mm,
When you recognize, say you're an addict, and you say, gee, I got to go off and I've got to get my fix. If you can stand back and say, this is simply mental chatter going on, and you can observe your mental chatter instead of becoming your mental chatter, then all of a sudden you have a resource you never had before. Some people, especially if you're people of faith, could say, God is testing me. And, you can view it from that viewpoint. That's very powerful. But even if you aren't, you're atheistic or agnostic, and you simply say, hey, this is the universe acting on me. But you can become aware of your thought process that is dragging you to indulge in your addiction. And when you become aware that you are not your addiction, you're the observer of your addiction, then all of a sudden you find that it has a little less ability to drag you. You might fail multiple times, but each time you go back and become the observer, and gradually you'll find that the addiction drops. You're no longer addicted to it, but you've got to
What I
stick with it.
Yeah, and what I find when I quit, when I first originally got sober, I remember immediately it was, I don't drink. It wasn't, I'm trying to stop drinking, and I had a nicotine habit as well,
Uh-huh,
and immediately was, I don't smoke,
uh-huh.
as opposed to I'm trying to quit smoking. My
Exactly.
experience is people that identify, you
Mhm.
identify with what you wanna be, then that's how you're gonna become what you wanted to
You've
be.
just struck a very powerful principle, Tim, and the thing is, make it part of your identity.
Right.
Like, say, for example, you go to a party and there's beef on the table, and people tell you, "Hey, this is great steak. Why don't you have it?" And you simply tell them, "Hey, I'm vegetarian," and all of a sudden they stop trying to tell you because it's simple. Vegetarians don't eat beef.
Right.
Make it your identity. Don't say I'm trying to not eat meat. Just say, I'm a vegetarian. And that's it. That's the end of the story. So
Right,
joking is very powerful. Make it part of your identity. I am a non-smoker. End of
right.
story.
Yeah. Yeah, as opposed to, "I'm trying to stop eating beef." They're like, "Well, let me tell you about this beef."
And
I
why don't
mean,
you do it tomorrow?
right, 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 right.
Exactly correct. Yes.
So, setbacks are common in recovery, relapse.
Mhm.
What advice do you have for individuals facing relapse or struggling with maintaining their mental wellness?
Don't beat yourself up.
Mm,
Simply say, this is what happened. Accept it. Don't beat yourself up. Don't run yourself down and simply begin again. Let me tell you another story. So what happened when my daughter was young is we threw a birthday party, a 1 year birthday party for her, and she was 1 year old and she was crawling. And one of my friends had a daughter who was 11 months old, and she was walking around and upsetting trays and so on. And after the party was over, my wife and I looked at each other and said, "Where did we fail? What happened? Is our daughter retarded? What's going on here?" And that day we sat down. I sat in one corner of the living room. My wife sat in the other, and we told my daughter, "What?" And she fell down and started crying. And normally, when she falls down and starts crying, either my wife or I would go and hug her and kiss the spot and make it well. At this time, we were a couple of hard-hearted ogres, and we said, "That's why you won." And she cried, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. But by the end of that day, she was walking. Okay, the point I'm trying to make is this: when you walk, you fall down, and
mm,
the first time you fall down, your mother goes and kisses his ball and kisses it and makes it well. And the second time you fall, she cries, and you do the same thing. But eventually, you don't. The baby doesn't cry, and the mother gets tired of going back, and she walks. Now, imagine what would happen, Tim, if each time the baby fell, you'd say, "Oh my God, she failed. Let's get her counseling. She failed again. She needs counseling."
right,
Ridiculous, right? It's
right.
exactly the same way. You're in addiction, you're recovering, you're going to fail multiple times. Treat each one like a baby walking and falling down, or a cyclist trying to learn to ride and he falls down. You pick yourself up, you brush yourself off, and begin again.
Right.
And recognize explicitly that this is what you're doing.
The other thing I want to point out is that with that baby that's trying to walk, that baby doesn't get depressed and feel bad about himself
Exactly.
because he fell down, because he falls down multiple times. He's not going to continue beating himself up or getting depressed or crying about it. I mean, he might cry for a little bit, but um, a baby brushes himself off and gets back up and continues to try.
Exactly.
And I think
I
that's
know.
the best way to work through it in my experience.
Yes. Just don't dramatize it. Just say, okay, I don't even call it a failure. Say, okay, I've start again.
Yeah, part of the journey. Part of
Part
the
of the
journey.
journey, exactly.
Yep.
Let's say you're going to play tennis and the coach regularly feeds balls to you and you hit it and you swipe at it, and some of them hit the net, some of them land on the other side beyond the boundary. If you had to cry each time, oh, I failed, that's silly. That's part of learning to play tennis.
Right.
You
Right.
keep at it, and eventually you will get the ball over the net and into the court.
Right. Right.
Persist.
Many of our listeners are professionals dealing with high stress environments. How can they balance their professional responsibilities with their recovery process?
It's actually quite simple, Tim. I said simple, I didn't say easy.
Mhm.
Remember? And the point is that the reason we feel overwhelmed is because there's a lot of mental chatter going on. Oh my God, there's so much to do. I don't have enough time to do it all. All the rest of that. There's mental chatter running amok. What you have to do is learn to focus on exactly what you're doing at that instant. So imagine you have an hourglass. There's sand on the bulb below, and there's sand in the bulb above, and one grain of sand at a time goes through the neck of the hourglass, right?
Mhm.
That grain of sand is the task at hand. Pour all of your emotional energy into that and that alone. When you learn to do that, you will find that the mountain of tasks you have kind of ease, and a lot of shit gets done.
Right. Right.
And the overwhelm goes away, and you become much more productive than you ever dreamed possible. It's really that simple, but you have to practice it diligently till it becomes your nature.
Right. It's simple. It sounds simple, and it takes practice.
It takes practice. As I said, it's not easy, but it's well worth it because of the benefits that accrue automatically.
Right. Resilience is crucial for both professional success and for personal recovery.
Mhm.
Can you share some strategies for building and maintaining resilience?
Yeah. I just told you one of them, which is don't label anything that happens to you as bad. Simply label it, this happened. And the second thing is, whenever any kind of disaster happens, don't put your hands on your head and say, oh my God, this is terrible. Think about, yeah, this is not what I would have liked to have happened, but it has happened. Now, what do I do about it? And the more you focus on what is within your control, the more you'll find that what is outside of your control, you simply live with it. You don't obsess about it. You
Mhm.
don't let it wreck your peace of mind. I will do what I can.
Right. It's mindset. In your TED Talk, you discuss hardwired happiness.
Mhm.
How can individuals recovering from addiction or mental illness tap into this inherent happiness?
This is something that's in us all the time, Tim. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Now, have you ever experienced a feeling of deep serenity and joy when you confronted a spectacular scenic view? Maybe an ice covered mountain, a beautiful valley, a rainbow.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what?
I'm thinking of the Grand Canyon
Yeah,
as
that
as we're
works.
talking about that. It's
So why did that happen? That happened because at that instant, somehow, inexplicably, you accepted the universe exactly as it was.
Mhm.
You didn't say, "Oh, that canyon is fantastic," but there's a couple of rock falls out there which look ungainly, and you give me a few sticks of dynamite and I'll get rid of that. Oh no, those rock falls were exactly perfect as they were. You did say that's a beautiful rainbow, but it's off to one side. If I could move it 200 yards to the right, it would be so much better. No, the rainbow was perfect where it was. When you accepted the universe exactly as it was, you didn't have to do anything to experience the happiness that is inherent in you. It came out and engulfed you. I'm suggesting to you right now, Tim, that your life right now, with all of the problems you have, your life right now, with all of the problems you think you have, is every bit as perfect. But you're trying with might and main to change one or more aspects of it from the point of view of, no, no, not this, it's got to be this way.
All right.
And when you're doing that, you're buying into what I call the if then model.
Right.
And the if then model basically says, if this happens, then I will be happy.
Right.
So if I had a great deal of money, I could go to exotic places on vacation and I'd be happy. If I were in a relationship, I could have great sex and I'd be happy. If this happens, then I will be happy.
Right.
The if then model itself is flawed, it's broken, it doesn't work. But the mistake we make is instead of recognizing the model is flawed, we think we put the wrong thing on the if side of the equation. I thought if I got married, I would be happy. I now recognize I married the wrong person, so I got to extricate myself from it with as little financial damage as possible and marry the right person, and then I will be happy. That's the if then model. And the model itself is flawed. But instead of recognizing that, we think what put the wrong thing on the if side of the equation. When we recognize that it is the model that's flawed, not what we put on the if side of the equation, that's when we start recognizing the peace, the joy, the serenity that is always with us. We don't have to find it, we have to release it.
Mm, right. I'm just thinking about how if I want things to be different than they are, I'm setting myself up for failure.
Repeatedly.
If I want my girlfriend to be different than she is, or if she wants me to be different than I am, or if I want my staff to be different than, it's like that's setting up for failure. Of course, I'm not going to be happy. That's just like me being angry or unsatisfied because things are the way that they are. It's like things are the way they are.
That's one of the things that I get on with my coaching clients, Tim. I ask them to be a civil engineer. Let me tell you something. So, I'm a county executive and you're a civil engineer. I call you to my office because I want a road built from here to there. And where the road has to go, there's a mountain, a forest, and a swamp. Do you get angry at the mountain, the forest, and the swamp? Of course not. Your skill as a civil engineer depends on how are you going to get the road built. If it turns out the mountain is made of granite and the swamp is really deep, you might jack up your fees, but apart from that, it'll have no impact on you, right? Your skill as a civil engineer will determine that, you'll figure out whether you should go through the obstacle, over the obstacles, under the obstacle, around the obstacle. But apart from that, you don't lose your cool. You don't get angry, correct?
Mhm.
In exactly the same way, all of the problem people in your life, the employees who don't work, the children who are disobedient, the wife who's demanding, they're the forests, the mountains, and the swamps.
Mhm.
You don't get angry at them. You just figure out how you're going to get your road built, your road to a successful, meaningful, wonderful life. Be a civil engineer.
Mm.
You don't get angry. You just say, this is the terrain I've been given. How do I build my road?
Right.
So asking yourself that question, am I being a civil engineer, will immediately straighten you out in a number of situations which seem daunting and
Yep.
overwhelming.
Yep. How can I work with this? Yep. What are your current projects or future aspirations? And how do you see your work evolving to further support individuals in their health and wellness journeys?
Okay. I really don't have any plans or goals, Tim. I'm now at the stage where I'm perfectly okay for whatever the universe gives. Would I like to grow my business? Yes. Would I like to have more coaching clients? Absolutely. And I'm taking some half hearted measures
Right.
to market and get them more. But by and large, I'm perfectly okay with whatever the universe decides. I come across great people and, they refer me to others and things come organically. And I accept whatever the universe gives is the right thing for me.
Hmm.
So I have been approached by a number of influencers like yourself, and I'm on their podcast. So
Right.
will the right person hear it and go through? Fine. Whatever happens is okay by me. I don't have a desperate burning desire. I will take some steps as I can based on my inclination at the time. But whatever happens is fine. I
So
accept the universe as it is.
tell me about your offer.
Actually, if someone were to desire coaching with me, I do have a a very unusual offer. See, normally what happens is we say, "Gee, what can I expect when I go with coaching like you? Can you give me references and so on?" And I don't give references. Uh, what I do basically is tell them that coaching happens at two levels. Level number one is cognitive, which is you look at what I share with you and you measure it against your life experience, your education, the situation in which you're in, and try to figure out does it make sense for me or not. And that's important. But there's a second level, which is even more important, and that is a presence which is transmitted. It elevates your level of consciousness. You cannot describe it, but you feel it. You literally feel at the end of a session with me that you're at a different level of consciousness where, things which are problems become minor bumps in the road. You're at a different level of consciousness. And what my offer is, since I am expensive, or rather I'm high price,
Right.
so if someone is considered, gee, should I engage in coaching with Dr. Rao? It's very simple. First of all, I don't accept everybody who wants to become my coaching client. I got a fairly rigorous screening process. But if you go through that, then have a coaching session with me, and I'll be happy to have it with qualified clients. And at the end of that session, you decide, do I feel different? Am I at a higher level of consciousness? If you're not at a higher level of consciousness, we're not right for each other.
Mm.
But if you are, then it is incumbent upon you to do whatever you can to become a coaching client. It's really that simple.
Right.
You make the judgment, but you make the judgment after you've already seen what can happen. So it's a no risk deal.
So, and you kind of already answered this, but what does someone get by working with you?
Two major things, Tim. Number one, more joy in their life.
Mm.
If I were to ask someone, are you happy? Most of my clients, they're very successful. They're quite a few are very wealthy. They'd say yes. But we define happiness very narrowly. We define happiness as there's nothing actively bothering me in my life right now. There's actually
Right.
something I'm looking forward to, like maybe a new Netflix thriller or dinner with my friend. That's all I'm talking about. Do you
Hmm.
have a deep feeling of joy in your life every day? Do you come radiantly alive? Can you fall to your knees in involuntary gratitude at the tremendous good fortune that is bestowed on you? Do you feel as if you're not walking but floating gently through the air, hitting ground every 100 yards or so? And if your life is not like that, why not?
Mm.
So I bring more of that experience, and along with that also comes a drastic reduction in feelings of stress and overwhelm and just a better life experience all around. That's one. And the second thing is you leapfrog your achievements and accomplishments. Most of us think that, you climb the ladder of success one rung at a time and it's difficult, it takes time, and you have to work hard. And I'm saying, what if you could do it effortlessly? What if you could leapfrog several rungs and do it again and again? And the idea is, yes, it's absolutely possible if you're not desperately striving. So you find more joy in your life and much more success than you ever dreamed possible.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Is there anything I missed?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. To reframe, I have a particular coaching niche. And my coaching niche is people who are successful, who are also driven. They really want to make a dent in the universe, but at the same time, they have a spiritual bent that they would like to bring into every part of their life. So, how you do that, that's the sandbox in which I play.
Okay, love that. Now, I have another question. So, how long does it take for someone to get from point A to point B? And what I mean is a person that is stressed out, overwhelmed, and they're in, they're like they're in the middle of a major, I don't know, call it a midlife crisis or whatever.
Mhm.
How long does it take for you to get them from there to being hardwired and happy?
Uh, you've got to understand, Tim, that eventually the culmination of this journey is when you recognize there is no me. There is no Tim, who's conducting podcast. Who you are is pure awareness. This is a story you're telling. That's the ultimate goal, if you will, the kingdom of heaven, where you are don't exist as an individual entity anyway. Okay? That is a rest of your life journey, maybe many lifetimes. But as you go towards the journey, you'll find that a reduction in your level of stress, more joy in your life, better relationships happen pretty fast within a matter of weeks.
Okay. Tell me about your morning routine.
My morning routine is it's about the same as every I get up, I brush my teeth, I do my yoga, and all the rest of that. But what is important is not what you do physically. What is important is what goes on in your mental chatter, in your mind. And I'm constantly thinking about the kinds of things we talked about in our interview today. I'm constantly thinking of what are new exercises that will help my clients bring this into their life. What are things that are inspiring that I could share with them? I have another program which is the Meaningful Living Mastery Program,
Hmm.
and that is for people who would love to have interaction with me but they can't necessarily afford coaching with me. So they have a podcast, an individual assignment, a group assignment, and a webinar where they get to ask me questions about their personal life, and it's moderated and facilitated. So and it's also a community that forms so that people have other people whom they can talk to about things like that. So, what are the things that I can do to make this experience better for all of the people who are in there? That's what my mental chatter is all about.
Mm,
So that's my daily routine.
right.
That's where I spend as much of my time as I possibly can.
Is your alumni association still active?
Say that again.
Is your alumni
Oh,
association that you mentioned earlier, is that still active?
absolutely. We have a retreat every year. Last year we had it in your neck of the woods in Tucson.
Nice.
This year, I don't know where it's going to be, probably
Uh-huh.
somewhere in Europe, but somewhere.
And if someone goes through your program, do they become part of your alumni association?
Once they complete the program, yes.
Okay. Okay. I love that. So where can people find you? How can they learn more about you? Give me a
The
I know
best way
you
is to go to my website and browse it.
mhm.
It's www.therawinstitute.com. The other thing that they can do is go to YouTube, put my name in the search engine, and dozens of videos will pop up. They can listen to some of those are very short, like a couple of minutes. Some of those could be 45 minutes or an hour. Go through whichever ones strike your fancy. And if you find yourself resonating with it, yes, yes, this is it,
Yeah.
then it's probably appropriate for you to fill out a coaching application and see whether you can go ahead. And if you don't resonate with it, we're not right for each other. It's really that simple.
Easy, easy. And is all the coaching virtual?
Yes.
And if
Some of my
someone,
clients I have not met in person.
okay. And if someone gets involved with your program, how often are they going to get to meet with you?
It varies depending on where they are and how. They certainly meet with me virtually at least once a month, and frequently more often.
Okay, great, great. Okay. Anything else that you'd like to share?
No, you've done a great job, Tim. Thank you. It's my pleasure, as I said, to be with you.
Yes, awesome. Okay, well, that does it for our time with Dr. Srikumar Rao. His insights into personal mastery, mindfulness, and the integration of ancient wisdom into modern life have truly been inspiring. If you want to learn more about Dr. Rao's work, visit his website at theraoinstitute.com. Be sure to check out his TED Talk, plug into your hardwired happiness. And thank you so much, Dr. Rao. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And to our listeners, remember that your journey to health, wellness, and recovery is unique and valuable. Keep striving, stay mindful, and as always, stay on your path to recovery.
And one other thing, Tim, when they go to my website, there's a big red box which says join the community. So if they click on that and enter their email, then they get my blog. And past issues of the blog are on my website. They just click on the box section and that'll tell them a great deal more about who I am, what I do, and the approach I take. And either it resonates with you or it doesn't.
Easy.
Easy
Thank
enough.
you. Thank you so much. And until next time, take care and be well.
Thank you, Tim. And let me wish you all the best too.
If you got value from this video, if you heard what you needed to hear, be sure to like it. Comment if you've got a question or you have something to say. Subscribe to the channel. Camelback Recovery provides treatment services for people struggling with mental health, mental illness, addiction, alcoholism, whatever it may be. So if you or a loved one is struggling and you need some guidance and you need some direction, reach out to us. Our contact information is down below, or you can go to our website, camelbackrecovery.com, whether it be detox, inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, sober living, recovery coaching, sober companion services, whatever it may be. Like I said, we can either help you or make sure that you get sent in the right direction. We help people all over the country, all over the world for that matter. I'll see you on the next video.